Do we have an echo? Yeah.
I don't know what though.
Shouldn't.
Maybe
It
I'm
might be on
using.
his end.
Oh, he must have just. We're not having it now, so he's turned off. Alrighty. So, introduction. Public comment, and you have no internet? Okay. Did everyone get a chance to look at,
It helps.
okay, did everyone get a chance to look at the meeting minutes?
Yes. Want to do a hotspot, Linda?
Pardon?
Want to do a hotspot?
If it doesn't come on in a minute, it's just really slow down.
Happens.
Okay. Any comments on the additional comments on the minutes besides mine?
No, I have some to look over.
Yeah, let's do a hotspot. I don't have it on my phone, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just spinning and spinning.
All right, Jane, you said you had a public comment?
Yeah, I was, looking at the agenda and you may be bringing it up, so I'm not sure, but I think it would be a good idea to debrief from our site walk from, segment one.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's on,
You might be mentioning it, but I didn't see it.
Question. Are fries the best form of potato, and if not, what is?
Who's talking? Remotely.
Potato. Fries.
Matt,
It's potatoes shaped like dogs.
Matt, can you mute?
Matt, if you could mute, that would be great.
On working circle.
Yeah.
Might have to, then he can come back, or he can request.
He's on your.
What would be better than fries, I think, Chris?
He's on for age.
Just on his end.
Waffle fries?
Some things can like.
Waffle fries.
Somebody had his number?
Potato fries.
Would have been time.
They don't even know what they talk about.
Remove from.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We just don't want to hear.
Potato.
All right.
It's still slow though, but.
Where's my bag? There it is.
There we go. Okay. No,
Were you,
no more discussion on the man. Relative marriage was fried. What?
were you able to mute or did you just pull?
I just pulled the plug on cam, which should still leave H cam.
Yeah.
Okay, so public comment, you thought we should talk about?
On, yeah, for a future agenda item, discuss the members' thoughts from the site walk from segment one.
Right, and I was kind of going to allow us to include that in the trails priority discussion because, I mean, there's certainly some thoughts on cool things from that, and I think that really
Okay,
is,
that's fine.
are there pieces from that
Yeah.
might
Yep.
be budget money items.
I also wanted to raise that I tried the Chat GPT as you suggested. I don't know if anybody looked at what it did, but I thought it was pretty awful. And it would,
tried it.
it's hard, it would be harder for me to go through and see how and fix that up than it would be the boringness of just doing it myself. So I don't know how the person at your meeting does it and they turn out good because if you look at what we have, they're just, it's like bad.
And I don't know if they're using ChatGPT, Gemini, or some other
God.
party AI. There's a bunch of platforms out there.
Right.
And that you can pay for different ones too. And I don't know if they're paying for it either. So.
It did some stuff nice, but it would miss massive details. It gets every name wrong, every trail wrong. Of course, how could it know that stuff? And I talked to somebody who does it and they say you have to work with it and train it.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I have enough kids and pets. Into training.
I'm just care and feeding of your
But it was a good
AI.
trial. I'm glad I tried it, but I didn't love it.
Ton.
What you can do is do a transcript, which I learned too from Google, so that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the April 16th and April 23 meeting minutes. So moved. Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Yeah, so I should put in.
And one thing to just point out is, the meetings are, you made one important change to the minutes, which is last time we were
Right.
here, we voted on second Wednesday of every month, but that was a mistake.
Correct.
And you really meant third Wednesday of every month?
Yeah, and
So
I
just
think we
overall.
corrected it at the April 23rd meeting. It got caught at some point,
Yeah.
right, but not everybody was here, so. That's,
I had a thought about that too, but maybe I should wait. I think we should meet more often, but we can discuss it further as it comes up. Maybe.
And the only other thing I wanted to make sure we cover somewhere, oh, this isn't getting powered for some reason. The other thing I wanted to mention was, follow-up from the school committee listening session. We should cover maybe under the groups
Mhm.
and see how the whole listening thing worked out and what and all that we did at the April 23rd meeting.
Yeah. I didn't, no, I did not put that in there. Good point, yeah. It's very difficult.
And come on.
All right, project updates. Go through quickly. Jack, anything with the realtors? So no Chuck's,
Oh, I got your check, whatever we want,
whatever we want to do.
no, he will, facilitate it. I think that he has a big meeting room down in itself. I think that's great. I'll leave that up to him. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, since technology is now completely failed me, I can get this to turn on.
So what do we want to do as a group in terms of, you know, setting it up? Do we want to do an
Pick a
after?
date and,
Yeah.
or pick a couple of dates.
Why don't I ask him for a couple of days?
Okay,
Okay.
and then our next meeting, we'll decide.
Yep.
Okay. And then that's
So
all
let's see, our next meeting is in
June,
June, so,
third week in June.
okay, so,
I think we should meet more often. I don't know if this is the proper time to bring it up or not, but I think we have a lot of stuff to do.
We've got a lot of stuff to do, yeah.
I mean, just like
So I'll get
one
some-
alone, that's gonna
I'll
be,
get some dates.
So if you get some dates, we can
So
certainly,
do we want the dates in June or the end of June?
yeah, I would say in June. And let's look at maybe meeting,
Last 2 weeks in June?
yeah.
yeah. When would we want to do that? That's, I assume that's an after work, during the work week kind of thing. We're meeting with realtors. Their weekends are usually, that's their work time.
Yeah,
I'll leave that up to him.
People from the committee do we want there?
want to come, because we're gonna post it anyway. People
Oh.
could come or they don't have to come.
Well, or do we want to do that?
Well, the question is, if we're asking him to host it in his place,
Right, it's gonna
I
get.
don't think we want to turn it into a public meeting.
No, I think we follow the form we set up for this, like the school committee meetings where two, at most three people go, so we don't have a quorum.
Okay,
You know, and sort of, you know, in this one, sure, Jack would go and then one other. one or
And
two
if we were to do it, here in this context, fine, but I think if we're going to someone's,
Right, we shouldn't,
yeah,
that meeting.
I'd come very well. It's going to be a listening
Yes,
session,
yes, it's not the,
correct, and we set up the guidelines for that.
right.
So that's, thank you.
oh, do you have the stewardship? I just haven't scheduled it yet.
And I'm scheduled,
I'll let you know when they do it.
Yeah. All right, fitness equipment on Center Trail, that's progressing along. It's actually in pretty good shape. Needs a little more work on the stone dust portion of the trails. You know, the
Are there signs going on?
sign, there are signs that we've got 4 stanchions for signs to go.
Yeah.
Missing one piece of equipment, but there's supposed to be
Oh, what do you
Signs.
think?
the balance beam,
Oh,
which just, they were back ordered.
oh,
They're an odd company. They sometimes are real responsive and other times they will go radio silent for months. So that was
Have
kind
an ATA on the signs and the balance beam from them?
of, I've got to double check. I reached out to them, have not heard back. So, they apparently are in their bad place right now, but I'll keep working on that. And the signs looked like they should have come, but they may have been delivered in a separate package. So they may be, Tim Person may have them in his office or I forgot to look downstairs here. They could be, in the back, so. Again, we reached, what's the story in signs, but they will be coming.
Just out of curiosity, was the balance being paid for?
No.
Okay.
No, it was not.
And then just the other sign, we need to do a sign that says use at your own risk. Did we need to vote on and approve that tonight, or we just do it?
No, I think we just do it because I think that's covered into the town
Insurance.
insurance.
But, okay, so who makes the sign show?
But
Yeah, it's just
You
temporary.
put a sign up, but
Put it at-
question
They-
with regard to that for the group. I don't think there's any such signs on the kids'
The other stuff.
play equipment, which to me,
Why do you need it?
why do we need it here?
Yeah, the sign just saying,
It's just another sign that people don't like.
Okay,
I don't.
Then
think we-
we-
I don't think that's gonna stop someone from litigating against.
No,
mhm.
I think it's just general knowledge that if you do it, you're.
Right, I mean, in fact, I would think those things would be more important on children's equipment stuff, but
So,
So where did it come up? Because we're.
the scouts
One.
raised it, so, we may put it up in deference to the scouts on this one.
yeah, but they're different. They're coming from a different place, I think, coming from a nonprofit, but also.
But they're
in
not
Tolkien.
responsible.
No,
Right,
their insurance.
So
it's
maybe we
somebody
should just reach back to Rashid and say, we want to take that sign down and not do one. And
Yeah, it may be useful to reach out to Elaine
maybe that's
and find,
bump it up.
yeah, bump it
I
up.
mean, it was interesting because
It is.
when they first raised that question, I reached out to Dave Del Torrio and said, we've got scouts putting exercise equipment together.
Yeah.
Is this something you as town engineer come over and, make sure the bolts are all tightened and all that sort of stuff? And he said, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, who did it on the playground equipment? Because obviously he said, oh, no, we just rely on the manufacturers to do that.
wow.
Like,
I-
so nobody thought about this before the scouts raised it as an issue, so,
So I would reach out. I think.
yeah, I think that's,
I have a question. Would you want Rashid to reach out to Elaine?
No.
No,
Okay.
I think we should do it.
So actually,
but-
it's Peter Nowak's going if it's needed.
correct.
If it is.
So just as a follow-up from the minutes, you were gonna reach out to Alex Dennehy
Mhm.
for accessibility. Were you able to do that, or is it still in the
We've been,
process of reaching?
we've been back and forth a few
Okay.
times and he owes me an answer.
Yeah.
So I asked him when I had a sort of a shallower pitch going to connect to the actual center trail was coming off the side and I cleared wood chips out of the way so it could go there. But they came in at a different angle. So I asked Alex to go take a look at that and make sure it works for him. So
That was not obvious when we were there.
apparently not.
No, Rashid didn't know it didn't, because we debated for a long time where it was supposed to go and it looked like that's where, but.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. So,
Because we're like, there's no way a wheelchair's coming down this. It seems too steep, but
yeah, it kept going up where I placed the rocks there on the one edge. So anyway,
oh, they use the rocks for other things.
Yes.
Okay. We,
Anyway.
there was gravel left. We could
oh,
always,
no, exactly. And it's,
And it could be that there's room for improvement or.
yeah,
the path itself is a little
Yeah.
undulating and needs to be. I just didn't,
one of those rollers, we were saying, I don't know if anyone has one, but,
it's a hand,
okay.
take a couple hours at most. Luke Road to Chamberlain Trail, we've gotten comments back or revised plans back from Beals and Thomas. I have not had a chance to sit down with them. Chuck Dodgy still has a few comments on that.
So just as a follow-up, because we've been talking about Google Drives and all that, and I tried in vain to pull up and for some reason I can get every other document from planning board and open space, and some old TCMC, but not much, but nothing new
So-
from the Trails Committee.
So when you have the links in the minutes, what happens? When you go to the minutes?
I've got, should brought my laptop, I've got dozens and dozens of documents that just show up and,
No, you click one link, what happens?
oh, it enlarges so you can read it.
So it does open up.
individual things, but I cannot find things from, the
Here's,
Trails
I'm gonna-
Committee.
yeah, I'm gonna,
And so I was looking
Yeah.
specifically for some
No,
of the
it's-
engineering plans.
yeah, so I don't know if
Previous
engineering
trails?
plans are there, but I can tell you how to get to the old Trails Committee stuff. And maybe everybody wants to see this. I just
I
need
think it
to
would be useful if
the
we
meeting quick.
could have some directions, because
Yeah.
it takes me like
Well,
15
you
minutes
want
to
to
just.
bookmark it. I've sent the link around before. You want to bookmark the link. And once you have it bookmarked, then just keep going back to it. But I'm gonna go in now. And I'll
Yeah.
put the links again in the minutes. But everybody, I did do,
So what I'm understanding, so these individual documents might be embedded within the minutes. So that's time consuming because I would have to click on every minute.
no,
No.
nothing's embedded in minutes. Now, if you're,
So if I'm looking for plans that Chuck might have submitted or you submitted for previous trails, I don't see any maps or something that would have been submitted.
so I think one thing Peter said is he's working with the town to get documents put in Google.
So they're,
Right.
So my guess is they're not.
they're not
Those-
there
those
yet.
aren't, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm not
Are you trying to get on?
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
That's not there yet. Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful information. So I won't waste my time further, but those would be good reference material because I think in some of the conversations that may come up, we may want to give it a take. Oh, there you are. Linda. Hi, Linda.
So I'm just gonna share and I'll put these links in, but it helps to share. So if you go on town website, don't look yet. Okay, if you went on the town website and somehow got to the web files, there are a few different folders in there.
Okay,
And I will send a link to all three of these. One is our new Trails Committee, established 2025. Does everybody here know how to use Google Docs?
still struggling, but mine doesn't show up. Mine doesn't present the same way. It shows as the actual document.
Right, but you can get to this if you follow
I
the
haven't found,
little folder.
and one time, believe it or not, I was able to find that.
If you can follow the link I send in the minutes to the folder, bookmark the link to the folder, and then you can always see the folder by following that link. Do you know what a bookmark is?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that's what I would recommend, and I'll put that in the minutes. So you're gonna put a bookmark to this Trails Committee 2025 folder. That's our own committee's folder. So things in.
What's it titled?
Trails Committee established 2025, but really you just want to use the link and bookmark it. Because, otherwise you can search, I guess. So one of the things in here, for example, is all our agendas and minutes.
Yeah.
There's some other things in here. But it also includes a link to the old TCMC folder. Look right there. See the one I'm clicking on?
Yeah.
That has all the old TCMC stuff. This is the old UCTC stuff. Okay, and the way you know that there are links to those old things is it's got a little, rename them to say it's a link to the old one. I'll say old and old so people know. Okay, but I'll put that in the minutes, and I'll put down, I recommend you create a bookmark to the folder and then you can.
Sometimes when the links come up and I'll try and reference a link, it's not live.
I don't know what that means. It's
When I click on it in the minutes, when you send it in, it doesn't pop up, just.
Well, then that's an error in the minutes, so make sure you give that correction back if it doesn't open up. If
Okay,
you're connected to the internet and the link doesn't work, it's a broken link and I've made a mistake, so just send that to me as a correction to the minutes.
okay.
Okay, and I'll put those links in the minutes again, so that everybody has them. Now that we've walked through it, maybe it'll be a little easier. And if you ever need help with it, just call me up.
You're very good about returning.
Okay,
Alrighty. So moving on, all trails, but I thought we would do that
Sure, we can do whatever we want.
at when we talk about maps, we got, the hard copy maps and ultras. All mapping would be good. All right, so moving on then to updates. I do not know why I didn't put the school committee meeting in here, but anyway, select board. They approved the idea of putting out some test road signs. Approvals needed are design review they wanted us to go to. Question there is who wants to do that?
I can,
Okay. Do we want to make sure we have somebody else with you? So anyone else want to?
Does it go with him?
Okay,
okay,
great, Jane. And then for the one going that we want to put in by center school, they mentioned that was in the historic district. So we should meet with the historic district.
no, they said don't do it.
They said,
They said you can do the one at Hughes and you can do the one at Fruit Street. Said don't do the one at Center School and don't do the one
Okay.
at Center Trail.
okay,
They give it reasons why.
Yes,
Yeah.
the one at Center School is it's in Historic District Commission and they said it'll take a lot longer, so it'll blow the purpose of our trial.
That makes sense.
The one at Center Trail is because the whole downtown development thing. We don't have a lot of say in what's happening there right now, so once it's done. maybe-
When is it gonna be done? Just-
right, but there's apparently like a bike repair station going in for the
For all of.
half-hour bike, half-mile biking folks.
I gotta tell you, I walk up that hill every morning. And in the afternoon, I hike on the Sun Trail. I have never seen one bike. I have seen 3 cars.
Well, I've seen bikes.
Really?
And I- I've seen.
Never have, I never have.
Reviews, both would like to.
I've
take
seen
it.
far more
Yes.
bikes not on it than on it, though. I will say that.
So when it's done, the project is done.
Then we could put something.
We can maybe put some.
Maybe.
Yeah, there was some regulation about, you could put it on an existing
No.
pre-approved DPW sign.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So that's really disappointing, but whatever. So then we're supposed to pick 2 more spots. And Elaine had told us this before we went into the meeting, but I was kind of, we didn't raise, we were hoping maybe, but.
Yeah.
And somebody, I think it was Elaine, prefers if we pick signs that have places with parking for
Mhm.
picking the other 2. So is it okay if I list some that?
Sure.
Okay. So Pond Street, the town forest, we have a new lot there. I don't know if people have been to that trail. Is a possibility. I don't know how much traffic, it does, I mean, these are just so like a step down from what we wanted, so. It doesn't get as much traffic, but it's a nice place. It has parking. Legacy South has some parking and does get a lot of people from Legacy Farms walking by there.
Mhm.
If we do these new trails at Legacy North Marathon, we could put one there. I think that would be pretty great.
Mhm.
We also could just do the normal Legacy North trails, a sign off of one of those parking lots pointing to
Yeah.
the trail there. College Rock, I think that's the best, but again, not much traffic goes that way.
It's no traffic.
Up on Saddle Hill, we could maybe put something, but again, not as much traffic. We could do the Ash Street Cranberry Bog once those 2 spots are in too. And I don't know if we could do Center Trail at Loop Road or not.
I don't think it buys that much. I do think, I think my preference would be Legacy North if we
Yeah.
can make that happen because that is so visible. And then the other possible is for Cameron Highlands, but I mean,
Legacy North, do you mean the existing?
at East Main.
At least Maine.
So
Where we were talking about putting the parking in. If we get to put the parking in, then we have
Right
to.
near there. I agree. That's a great one. And assuming we do that.
Did we
soon.
talk about Hughes?
Yeah, Hughes is
Hughes is a kid.
pretty accepted.
Yeah.
So that would be 2.
And the Marathon Museum is 3rd. Fruit Street and Hughes were proposed and accepted.
Yeah.
Marathon Museum area could be a 3rd if we all agree. Any other thoughts on the?
Cameron, but on the Wood Street side, so a trail or a sign on Wood Street at Whisper Way.
There's a pretty good sign there though already. It's not ideal, but it's
Well, but the point is that to have it perpendicular to the flow. of traffic.
Visible.
It's a-
I have to say of all the signs, though, that one is the most visible from the road.
It is.
But we could do that if we want.
Could you do one on Berry Acres?
You could.
I mean, a lot of cars go by there.
Yeah.
I guess
Trails are.
Berry Acres is in good, that's a
Kinda
good
iffy.
idea. Is Berry Acres in good shape right now?
There's no, the parking always, the across the street.
Right.
No, you can still go into the parking, on the Berry Acre side. I just did it not long ago.
Where do you park on the Berry Acres side?
No, but then you've got to go across the
Right.
waterway right now.
Yeah, that's what I was.
So, you know, again, the idea is families with small kids. And that's where Berry Acres is problematic because
Across.
you got to either cross the street or the swim, depending on where you park, yeah.
You can dock around that dam, but it is a little challenging.
But,
Yeah, this time of the year.
I mean, I think ideally, long-term, we put them in at a whole bunch of
I
places, but
suggested, I think about places that people are gonna see the signs that create some awareness of trails.
Yeah.
Even,
and so that's where even though there's a trail at Cameron, because gets a good flow of traffic.
That's true, it does.
Though there's also existing signs on the Fruit Street, access to the athletic fields already. But they're not perpendicular. They could stick out more.
Pretty sure feels there's the green signs are.
Yeah, what are you saying?
I think they're in both directions too.
Yeah, they're quite, so you're saying that they're all set, you think?
No,
So the fields are, there are signs for the fields.
Right.
There's no sign for the trail.
and ours was gonna be, we were gonna put ours up more at the Brook Hollow end, the Pratt Farm Brook Hollow,
Yeah,
rather than that where the athletic field signs are. Does that make sense?
oh, it certainly makes sense to put them at the Pratt Farm site. More prominently, I guess. You can already see signs there too, if you look off the side of the road.
Right, but that's the point is where people don't.
It's hard to do.
That's right, that's
So,
right.
around the dog park, I think there are signs pointing at the trails, but
These would be on the road, not on.
Are you talking about the driveway to the field itself?
yeah.
Right, so as you're going towards the dog park,
Yeah.
there's a sign that would point left
Yeah,
to the.
there's actually an existing sign that's misleading that.
Right, but we're seeing signs on the road itself on
But-
Fruit Street,
Yeah, okay.
not on the driveway.
I don't consider that really a driveway. That's practically a road so long, so more than a mile long. It is.
So Peter, your proposal was near the Marathon Museum and the Whisperway Cameron Woods.
Yes.
Do we want to vote on that or do we want to have more discussion on other alternatives?
This is for the test.
This is for the
survey.
second,
Before.
third.
I think that's great. I think we should just go for it. Those are
Does
probably.
anybody else have any other?
Are we choosing one or two?
Just the
Two.
two to replace the two.
Right,
For purposes of the pilot.
Yes,
okay,
make a decision and move on.
yeah, makes sense.
Okay, do we have to vote or?
No.
Okay. Okay, great.
All right,
Done.
planning board, were you on that?
I wasn't, no.
Oh, it was fun, you missed it.
I read it I read it in the Hopkinton Independent.
I tried to not be going like.
Yeah, same, it's
Yeah, 'cause-
typical.
yeah, so planning board does not have, their jurisdiction is scenic road.
It's a-
Are these trees contributing to the scenic road or can they come down? Is the rock that's in the wrong way on the stone wall, can that? John and I went up the day before and met with the homeowners and I think, quite a constructive meeting with them. We sort of said, well, we can maybe slide the trail down, but they stuck with all their points and the planning board just said, oh, well, now we're gonna have a site walk to talk about it. You guys, and it was funny because Carrie Reed, DPW director as tree warden, had responsibility for the shade tree and she basically went,
Whatever.
good.
Yep. Do it.
Yeah,
Just not that big a difference.
so it's just planning board.
Objections. I read the article too, but just in case.
Just a couple of neighbors were concerned about,
The-
they would rather. have-
The neighbors, it's one of the reasons that we, are in a position of meeting with neighbors. Because people get nervous, and my bad, when I was not aware of what planning board sends out to neighbors, and there are 6 neighbors in terms of their package. And if you were a neighbor living there and you got this package that's got 2 lines that says, we're cutting down a bunch of trees and this is what we're doing, and there's really not full information, you get concerned. And then, so we got a lot of response.
But what were
From the
your
neighbors.
concerns?
Their concerns were that people might walk down their
Blindside.
driveway. They were concerned about
Walk down their driveway.
because it wasn't clear with the trail. They have a long driveway down to their house. Somebody might walk down there if they're parking there.
Okay, so if we had signage,
The signage would help with that, and they agreed on that. They were concerned about safety. They walk along that's, a windy road that doesn't happen to be a windy section, but they were concerned about safety.
so I just wanted to respond to that one. I already have to park on Blueberry or whatever and walk along the road to get there. Now I won't have to,
Well, their point was that if they're getting their kids in the stroller and a car is on the side of the road, they're gonna have to either go on the road or kind of go over the rock wall with the stroller and the kids.
Which they would have to be on there anyway. They have to be in the road, but
That,
Yeah.
I was just answering the question,
I know.
what was their concern?
yeah.
I'm not here to argue their position.
I
Yeah,
really want a sidewalk.
Well,
Yes.
that was one of the things that was raised, which is something we've talked about, and I quite frankly like that idea, but then you've got a sidewalk going to a trailhead. And so I actually looked at, do we just put a stone dust only? Do we start that process of maybe stone dust? Because, therefore it wouldn't be available in the winter. But during the time people are most using the trails, it's there. It's much lower cost.
don't just what?
What's the difference between a stone dust sidewalk and a stone dust parking lot?
Parking spot.
Thank you.
Well, I
Not
think
one.
we would, yeah, but wouldn't we be not using particularly stone dust, but a more of a gravel mix?
No, it'd be
Now, for sturdy.
you use a base. Yeah, you use, for
the
either
base.
one, you use a road base, and then the stone dust is just a top dressing.
Yeah, and you
in either
necessarily
case.
might
Um,
not want to do that for.
So is that what they meant? by
no,
saying-
ideally they wanted a regular sidewalk, but then you have, if you're going to put the sidewalk in, it becomes a bigger town issue.
That's a,
Because if you're spending, $100,000 to go to a trailhead versus do you then go and spend $300,000 and go down to link to, what is it, Thayer Heights Road or what's?
Is that what they want this, like, what do they want the sidewalk to go to and from this?
well,
Well, we talked about it with regards to going to the trail because their house is right there, but I think it gets a little weird of, individual sidewalks to people's houses.
I thought John explained it well. Look, that's not what planning board has to look at. We were just looking at the trees right now.
Right.
So the sidewalk really is irrelevant.
Right. And
In
what,
the case.
what we talked to them about was that we'd be, as part of our connectivity mission, a sidewalk extending from Blueberry Lane, continuing up Ash to connect to the neighborhood fits into that walking loops scenario. So I think there's some value in that. And
There's
we'd be
value.
happy
There's value.
to have them.
Topic.
It's separate from this,
It
you're
is.
saying?
It's definitely
Do
separate.
they
yes.
agree with that?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, they definitely agree with that. And because
The
Peter
neighbors
mentioned,
do and the planning board.
Planning board.
well, I can't speak about the planning board. I'm talking about
The
when
neighbors.
Peter and I met with the neighbors on Sunday.
But you can't blame them for bringing that up.
No,
No.
no.
Were there any other concerns?
I think safety was,
That was, the
Main.
safety was the main one, yeah.
Right.
And, and then they wanted, Peter suggested moving the parking spots further north and giving a little bit more of a buffer area between their driveway and the parking spots.
and perhaps putting a tree or some planting in there. You have to be real careful because you don't want to cut off visibility for
Right.
as they exit their driveway.
Well, that was the other concern they had is visibility.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why you wanted to create the buffer to hamper that visibility or to
Right.
lessen that. But
Right.
Increase the visibility.
And we tried to explain, basically, the parking spots already exist there. We're just trying to improve them so that somebody can pull further off the road. So it's an enhanced safety actually, but anyway, bottom line, planning board is gonna have a sidewalk on Tuesday, the 27th,
5 p.m.
5 p.m. I will obviously be there. Sean, can you make that? Do you? I mean, again, we don't have everyone show up because then it becomes a public meeting, but
Sounds like, oh, you're really.
Is 5/27? Like that next week?
yes,
That
next
was-
Tuesday, 5 p.m., 5 p.m. But yeah, John did try to explain that this isn't in your wheelhouse, guys. And that fell on deaf ears.
No, but the planning board members will recognize that.
Well, that's why I think Frank would be.
Yeah, I think I'm 27.
Jane, with no three.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's the most recent.
What are you doing?
She knows more.
Yeah, that was good. That's something I would have done. Thank you.
She's dialed in.
No, my term
Just-
expired.
Just expired.
Just expired.
What do you think? Does it make sense for the three of you to, do you want to go
She
too?
could go as a private citizen.
Right, do you want to go, I'm saying, also, or
She
instead?
should go. She knows where the bodies are buried.
The most recent.
Yeah, the most recent one.
Right.
No,
Well, either Jane or Fran, I think would be a vote.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And
she, I
Everybody.
to Jane's point, I can go as I defer to Jane. I'll go as a private
Yeah,
citizen.
you just, I'm here as a. I'm not here as a-
And
like
what's
the
the purpose of the sidewalk? Like what happens as a result of it?
They're just trying to look and see, get the visibility of their own, so
Yeah.
that they can make a statement of their own acknowledgement.
Right.
And we need that statement to continue.
Well, I think that if we really want this, it's not a bad idea to show up and be,
No. Do we need this statement? Do we need their approval?
yes, planning board is going to.
Having said that, there's really, there's no way under their rules that they can deny it. Having said that, part of our job is to meet with the butter. So we need to schedule a meeting for these. I've got that, the butters notices, item 4, we'll get to in a minute, and this is one I want to talk about.
Okay,
But, so we have to schedule a meeting of our own with them.
okay.
So
you're gonna be doing,
and again, yeah, but just talk about that at the next thing. So
Okay.
the other item was basically Open Space Preservation Committee and Trail Club have been working on the new Colella Trail. Chuck said he's going to go out and flag that additional route for whatever point we want to meet with Colella's neighbors. And then the final thing from other committees, it's committees and groups, is the Trails Club is looking at having a mid-July gathering,
Mid-June or July?
mid-July now.
yeah.
Changed, the Trails Club changed it and seeing as how they're the driver. But the idea is to sort of highlight trails in town. Focus a little bit on the new Colella property and the trail that's going in there. But also have these maps and bring those and whatever we can pull together. But have other trails, so ideally have Halt there, Trails Group. Scott's not here, but one of the things we talked about was, piling and having logs and stuff for kids to play on up in that huge field. So maybe we could do a little bit of that. I just reached out to Chuck Joseph. His son, DJs, does outdoor musical instruments. So he has, one of those was a possible. I think Chuck said he's got an example. They build them at Chuck's place. So he said he had one he's going to show me. So I just asked him if that might be available. So, but bottom line, think about stuff that would encourage folks to get interested in trails and what else we think we might want to bring.
We picked
And then,
a day, specific day, didn't we?
yeah, we did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go,
And then, so Jack and then DCR, whether there's anything. They participated in the last trail thing we did in the library, so they might be interested.
Do you have a date?
I'm looking.
Linda's,
I think we do.
yeah, I thought we did, but I can't remember.
Yeah, that was the first, that was original.
But I didn't put it
Never
in my
changed.
calendar, so I don't know. Not here, so. If we get into it, I forgot to add it to my calendar. Surprise. I'll tell you what, I'll find out and put it in the minutes. I'm almost
Okay.
positive we picked a date on it.
So Linda, yeah. Pretty sure we did too, but I was kind of figuring out where it fit relative to other stuff. All right, moving on then to item 4, the butters notice.
School committee feedback. Did you-
Could you just, what happened at the school committee?
Yeah, do you want to cover that?
Because I read what I read in the paper, I just like to get your take on.
The
Can I
school,
also just make a comment that I feel the tone of the Independent, especially the headlines, is misleadingly provocative. And what I wonder, I think we should do something about that. And one of the things we could consider doing is ask them to do an article on the new committee and interview us. And in that interview, you know, if you get an interview with them, stress that we're really trying to have a cooperative, supportive approach with the town and, you know,
Yeah.
appreciate the independent support of that.
Hmm,
I think it's always interesting, but it's important to remember also that the writer of the article doesn't do the
headline,
headlines.
Yeah.
That's the editor.
right.
And that's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
His job is to
is to sell,
get people,
Get people to read it.
yeah,
to get people to read it.
and controversy sells much better than
Yeah.
everyone's happy.
Sure. It's just the way it is. But I think I think the authors do a very good job and then
yeah.
Sometimes.
it gets flipped.
Another thing we could do is someone could just reach out to Jerry and just mention it, that we would appreciate that.
Like I said, that's
Mhm.
the job.
But I think,
But
you know, if
as long as we acknowledge it, that that's where we're coming from.
sometimes if we, you know, it won't work in every case. We're still gonna get these
Yeah.
headlines, but there may be a way, if we're thinking about it and have one of these meetings, to spin a headline that's positive that might get readership too. Sometimes there are ways to do that. So if you think of that, I would strongly recommend that we reach out to Jerry and say, hey, here's a possible headline.
Well, he actually loves trails. He gives.
He
them
does.
So
Oh, I know.
much coverage.
Yes.
Well, that's it. I'd rather have the coverage, and even if it is questionable headlines,
No, he
but
gives a lot of positive
Oh, yeah.
coverage.
Yeah.
So I would just,
we get a lot of coverage, and
I just don't like misleading false headlines. That's, might as well be hot news then. you
It's
know?
not just trails, misleading stuff goes up.
so we're going to fisticuffs tonight. Is that what's going to be?
No,
Jane and Sean go to fisticuffs.
no, I'm just driving it. It's
I
not.
just wonder what happened. That's.
Yeah, so bottom line with the school committee. Hold on.
It's just a general thing.
So with the school committee, basically, so Scott was there as my second. We sort of walked through that we're looking at putting the Chamberlain to Whalen Trail in, that we're gonna go before Concom with that. The notice of intent is pretty close. The fitness equipment is in, and that could be something that'd be used for the school. And then we had our essentially three questions to ask them, you know, what do they like about trails? What were the concerns? And they focused on the concerns, not surprisingly, which was safety. And if we have trails, there's kids walking to school. Center Trail came up. What about kids walking to school up that trail if there's, you know, a questionable person? And I said, well, you know, and they agreed that it was more likely a perceived risk than an actual risk. I said, if somebody's out in the AA, and one of the members actually said, people are probably at greater risk of walking on the sidewalk to school and somebody pulls up inside with a car or the famous white van, you know, you
Yeah.
can't get a white van down Center Trail right now. So, you know, it's just, and if kids, they have their phone, if they saw some guy lurking out there, I said, they can't probably get away. The response would be pretty intense from the police force. So you're raising this as a concern, but it's not a real concern.
Well, it bothered me in a larger sense that someone was this implication that trails are dangerous places.
Right.
Now, that goes back to something that a member of the Upper Charles Trails Committee said in the newspaper about these were sort of conduits for criminals, you know.
It's a old saw that's been out there for a while.
Right, but
Yeah.
it seems to have, what bothered me in the article was it seems to have a life.
Mhm.
And there was some mention of, you know, closing school property during. And to me, the more people that are on using those trails around the school, the safer they have.
Right.
And they didn't seem to be any recognition of it, huh?
They had the opposite. They said that they want to get fewer people on Loop Road and using the trails at the school.
Right, exactly. And to me, that leads to make the trails less safe.
Well, I think that might be a topic of discussion for this committee. Further on, as another agenda item, to come up with some concrete risk reductions that other cities and towns have used to, for instance, the town of Milford has their trail go by 7 schools, and they've come up with a really good system where they put between the trail and the school a 5-foot chain link fence. And that goes into the planning and the cost when you are planning for these grants. You mentioned that we're gonna need, because you go out and you find out from the citizens what they would like to see as safety measures, and you write that into the grant proposals.
Yeah, so I think there's two
So
pieces.
there's a lot of stuff that we can do to answer these folks' concerns. They're legitimate concerns, and then we just have to.
Well, the question is, how legitimate are they?
Yeah.
What facts are they based on? That's-
Well, there are.
Right, if you're on a trail and you want to get somebody and take them away, which is they didn't say those words, but that's what they meant. It's much harder to do that because you have to get them all the way off the trail. It's so much easier to.
So
do on a
I think
street like
there's
that.
two pieces.
Yeah.
And I think the pieces are, and I think maybe we do work with, this would be a good example, maybe working with Jerry to come up with an article that addresses the facts, which is that
Right.
trails are really safe places and much safer than most other places.
Correct.
You know, kids are very safe in Hopkinton to begin with. That's number one. Trails are probably even a safer place. So that's the facts.
Right.
And there's a lot of perception that trails are somehow scary. That's not the reality. And I'm pretty sure there's data out there
There
from
is.
folks on that.
Yeah, we did.
And then part 2 is Jane's point, which is that having said that, we understand there's a perceived risk and there are ways to mitigate that
Yeah.
perceived risk. So it's a two-piece,
We have public sessions.
you know, so maybe if it's almost a follow-on to
Uh-huh.
that bad headline.
Right.
And say, hey, Jerry, guess what? Yeah,
Hey.
we didn't like that. Here's the reality and can we help you with an article on it? I mean, I think
Yeah,
your
be
point
proactive.
for another meeting,
It's- yeah.
but maybe think about doing that.
Another working session, you know, we
Yeah.
can do lots of. outreach.
It just seems to be that if you try to restrict access to the school property during school hours, you're practically restricting access of the school by the children that are going to the school too.
This thing,
How should you
you
do
can
one without
mitigate
the other?
that. Well, you can do, security, you can do, videoing. You can, the
Well,
schools,
that's not
you can
bad.
have a pass gate and, you know, in certain sections, maybe 3 passes where kids can come in.
Yeah.
And then the schools can put up monitoring. And also, what is very effective is, on the fence itself and on the building, this gate is being monitored. So anybody is, you know, they're going to be cautious. And
Yeah.
if you put those safety precautions
Yeah.
out there, people are less active, less
Fine.
inclined to do that if they know they're being watched. And there are that's just a few suggestions. There are lots of proactive safety features that we can do to help our citizens feel more comfortable. And that's our job as a committee, to reach out
Right.
and help educate people. And I think that, again, as Peter suggested, this is a whole topic for another
Yeah.
meeting.
All right, moving on, item 4, and that's what you want, okay. So, no.
So, I mean, I don't put a lot of effort into solving things that aren't problems.
Well, it could have been a problem.
It's a perceived problem, and unfortunately, perception is the problem.
It becomes a reality if you don't address it.
Well, I think that's where the transparency and the advocacy comes into play before we start putting in fencing and gates and cameras, and
Yeah.
which may be necessary, but
But you
What-
just.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's transparency and advocacy and information.
Alrighty, so a butters notice. So we have 2 abutters notices. You were supposed to have drafts to look at, but I got home later than I thought I would today and was kind of,
Did you want to draft the color one, or did you already do that?
I have not drafted it.
Did you want me to draft that?
Sure, but let's talk about shorting. So, with regard to the Ash Street one, Sean drafted one for that, which was different from what I would do, which, basically had all the figures and was like 3 or 4 pages, basically what we'd submitted as the,
Submission to the planning.
the application to planning board, yeah. I hadn't thought of doing it like that. I've sort of done 1-pagers with a map. Here's where the work's going on. The map, because it's fit on the 1 page, sometimes it's clear and sometimes it's less ideally clear. But usually can explain it. And the idea is that somebody has 1 page, at least give them information. Having said that, 1 page versus 4. The 4 certainly has more information and I think is valuable that way for someone who's really interested. It may be better. So when I saw what you submitted, I said, you know what? Because my initial reaction was, no, mine's better. And then I said, no, that's up to the committee.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Something that's got more information? I mean, think of yourself as someone,
As a property owner.
as a property owner, what we do know is that what the planning board puts out and what Concom puts out on their notice of intent, things like that, is enough information to scare you, but not enough to let you know what's really happened. So we were trying to get beyond that. What Sean put together certainly, I think, is much more comforting.
Do we have a draft? of-
Yeah.
We look at that since
Sure.
where is it?
It's with Peter.
Maybe
We can go to electronic version of that. We can put a link to in the minutes.
Yeah, I can put a link to that. And then obviously I've got other
Yeah, could
ones that are out
Take a
there.
quick look and then we would know how to respond.
But I'm just looking for general thoughts at this point. But
Well, and before we draft,
Notice to abutters, is there something up front that says what the Trails Committee is?
I don't think so.
I think that might be helpful
I
to
think
people. That
I
they'd
have
like to know who
sense-
they're getting the car.
it wasn't lengthy, Jack. I think I
No,
did.
it-
I think I had something to kind of illustrating what we were trying to do,
Right.
accomplish.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I answered who we are, but more of what we're trying to
That
accomplish.
we're a town entity.
Yes.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Just, it's nice to know when you get mail.
But if it's not, that would,
Yeah,
that would be.
Trails Committee and part, is a town committee and part of our job is to inform neighbors when,
I probably put that in there.
you may have been reading on a
Well,
lot of stuff.
take
Okay.
a look when you send
At
it.
any rate, so people read both of them.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then my gut is we're gonna have something of a combination of the two at the end.
I was gonna say, I kind of like a 1-pager for the people who don't want all the details and then the details for the people who do want to dig in, but that's not a great answer because it means more work, but.
A link to it.
It wasn't that much more work because we had to do all of it for the planning board. Right? And so I looked at it from the perspective of if it was my house, what would I want?
Right.
Valid.
That's what I did. And so,
And that really is who we're trying to address is to have people have enough information that they can ask questions. So for example, the blank slate right now is the trail that's going in at Colella, at the new Colella land. And we can put a map in there pretty easily and certainly some explanation, but is it a one pager? Or it may be better as multiple pages. We'll say, here's, what we're trying to do at this point and what we're trying to do going forward. And for Colella's, the idea is to get people interested in it, not concerned, but interested enough so they come out and perhaps provide some guidance. So for example, meeting with these Ash Street neighbors, it's like, okay, we can move the parking area down. We can take some other steps maybe to help make it better. We did one over for the trails to the new Chamberlain Street extension, the southern area there, which Chuck has been working on putting a couple of bridges in, Chuck Dotchie. And we met with the neighbors who had some concerns about that, and we shifted one section of trail further away from the house. He had a trail already going to his backyard, so we shifted it. We kind of blocked that one off for him and shifted it a little bit. Both neighbors who had concerns were happy with the steps we took. They realize that it's town land. Yes, we can put the trail in, but okay, you're paying attention to us and we'll never see somebody using a trail again. Same thing with the Colella land. I think there's ways to make that.
And you have to find out what their concern is first.
Right. Yeah, you want them showing up in the field so that you can walk in and say, oh, well, what if we move the trail 5 feet this way at this point? Oh, okay, now it works.
So you want that, so when you send this to them, is it followed up with a meeting with
Yes.
them all at once?
Yes.
And so the purpose is to give them enough information to come to the meeting with concerns and ideas for addressing them.
Mhm.
That's basically the point.
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't have to answer every possible concern they might raise. It just needs to give them information to think about it.
Yeah.
So I guess one other thing is, you say you like the idea of a one pager. I'm assuming that's to maybe keep things brief or maybe not scare people off. You like the idea of the 4 pages because it gives people more information. I don't know if the number of pages matters other than the fact that it might scare people off if it's too many, but other than that, I don't know that it matters whether it's.
It depends on how it's set up. If you're in a cover sheet, your one pager, if you have highlights and then you have more information on those particular areas on your 4 pages. So if people were interested in one aspect, but not necessarily the other 3, they could just flip the page.
Yeah. And it may be a compromise where we put one page with a map, one page with the text, and do it that way. I mean, the other, from a purely practical point of view, is, again, not a big deal at Ash Street. There's 6 abutters, really 2 that have paid attention to it and raised some issues. But when we start talking, the Colella piece, there's a couple of questions there. One is, who do we send this to? Certainly the folks on Teresa who back up to the property. But what about the folks on Deer Run and Blackthorn and that, across Hughes? Did they also get it? Because use of that trail may increase use of the Hughes Trail. So when we want to be inclusive, but,
It's also Joseph Road, I guess, right?
and Joseph Road, yeah, exactly. And so that becomes a much larger mailing.
My first thought is to notice to the abutters, literally keep it at that, to get more information from other potential users. That's when you'd have other types of, like the Trails Club Day,
Mhm.
or maybe we do more frequently of those. Right, we'll have a Hughes Farm Day where people around those neighborhoods and encourage everybody who comes use it, people who park and people who can walk.
Do you recall how we got the folks for Alex's project?
Yeah, yep, I do.
Okay, could you
Yeah.
enlighten?
Yeah,
Because I can't remember.
no, we did so the Charlesview neighborhood's got a Facebook
Right.
group,
Right, that's,
and that's where we posted it.
yes.
I'm sorry, what's the Alex project?
The Alex is my son,
Oh,
It was the Eagle,
and
it was the
he
Eagle
did a
Scout
bridge is in
on Joseph.
on the western side of the Hughes Farm Trail.
Okay, I hadn't even thought of that, but that makes sense. That would be a good place to send this Colella one to.
Oh, I was planning on doing that regardless.
Okay, perfect.
And every situation is going to be different.
Yes, and that's, the nice thing is that we're not constrained like Concom or some of the other groups. So we can be broader, less broad, depending on how it works. We're not,
But let me just clarify, the only reason why, because I'm a member of the neighborhood and I know this Facebook exists, and that's the
Right.
reason why. And it's not to distract from the other folks on the south side of the Hughes Farm Trail.
right,
Like if they had one, if there was somebody that I knew that had a Facebook group of that neighborhood, yeah, I would advocate that as well, but I personally won't go searching out for it.
yeah, I can talk to Jamie,
so
former
what
member of the
were you,
committee.
so just so I get this right in the notes, so earlier I thought you said just send it to the abutters. Is that just true?
When we're talking about in general, abutters notices, right? Because we talked about the Ash ones, Ash Street tonight, we're talking about the Colella Farm. I would keep it to the abutters.
So who is that in the case of this Colella thing?
It would probably go from Hayden Road and wrap all the way around to Joseph.
Okay, so more than just the Teresa people who back up.
Well, no, I'm just talking about you look at the Colella Farm property and it probably connects to 20, 30 homes.
Okay, so all of those, not just the Teresa.
No, then all of the ones that abut the property on Colella Farm. So the Colella Farm property probably abuts
To 20.
to 20 or 30 homes.
And those are all on Teresa?
No,
No,
there's a couple on Hayden
Hayden
Road.
Road, Teresa, Alexander, Joseph.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think Peter was saying
So
Teresa
they-
generic,
So they get the mailing, we do Facebook for.
because I'm a personal resident of it. I know it exists. And
I think that's a good point, is that an awful lot of communities have Facebook pages, so we ought to be thinking about that.
And if we know about it, right,
Yeah.
but as a general rule or
Right.
policy, I think we would just do the abut.
Yes.
okay.
And as an aside, because I'm a neighbor, resident of Charlesview, I knew about this. I can do a little bit more.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
each neighborhood as it comes up.
Yes,
I
exactly.
guess I would say you could always in the abutters notice, say, feel free to share this with a larger neighborhood group. You would,
Yes, that's actually not a bad point.
because if we don't know the Facebook group, they do.
Correct.
Mhm.
I think that would just do it organically anyways.
Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah, I'll just
Do it.
well, I was gonna say, I've been part of that type of thing.
And
So
it actually, it worked out well in that case, in case of Alex's project, because one of the people most against any trail going through there lived right there. But when we had 15 people show up, 14 of whom spoke very favorably of this trail and how they were going to use it, he got very quiet and stayed fairly quiet. So that's the advantage. Of course, the other advantage is, or the other disadvantage is you can get the exact opposite of that.
Well, then that's a good, but actually, I think that's a good thing,
Good, yeah.
because that's the feedback we're trying to get. If you have a group of 20 people that show up, 19 say, we don't want this, all right, I will go back to the drawing board.
Right. Although in Colella's, it's town land. We bought it for a purpose.
I'm not arguing the practice I'm just saying the merits are, the point is that we want to get feedback and transparency, yeah?
Yes.
And whether it's good or bad, we
Right.
want it.
We want it.
See, we under advertise it if there's a lot of negative publicity. So,
No, but to Sean's point, I mean, I think it is what it is, and
It is.
we may have
I
to,
mean, after,
Messaging is so
just don't,
important.
encourage people to use it so much if we think that the neighbors are uncomfortable. But another question about abutters is, do we encourage abutters to build their own trails to get to them?
Again, if it's on their own property.
So, you know, some of it's not gonna be because there's.
No, they're taking their property in that.
Hey, I think those sort of organic things,
Yeah.
We-
It happen.
just, exactly, it happens and we don't worry about it too much unless there's
It'll be a reasonable position for us to take is that we would want to encourage people to.
Sure.
To be able to.
I know.
access
With
it.
some caveats, that they comply with existing laws.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that we advise them to do something to prevent people from walking off the trail into
Yeah,
their own.
Put a private property sign on there.
And again, it's education, it's signage, it's outreach, it's helping
Right.
people.
Right.
To understand how we're coming from.
Okay, so Sean's gonna draft the collateral.
After we get feedback on that.
Okay, and so
Right,
how are
two
you
options.
providing the feedback?
So I'll provide what Sean shared with me and then also a couple examples of the one pagers. So
Okay.
folks can look at the two of them and again, thinking as in a butter, which would you prefer to,
And so we're gonna discuss that the next
For another
meeting.
agenda.
yes.
Okay.
Um. Okay.
Okay, moving.
Townwide trails map. So. Spend the amount of time, I figure spend less time on trail priorities, but, so. I reached out to Elaine and asked her. I actually asked Josh, IT. What they could give us. I said, if we can you give us the, Open Street Map. You know, what does that provide? And then he said, oh, and we've also got the one that their GIS person had been working on while working with Chuck Dawsey. None of them are labeled as to which one is which, but essentially, and there's obviously two others that he provided, so,
Two identical or two?
no. Why don't we just- So take a look at this and you can see this just shows the trail.
Oh, now what, no, it shows the trails. And what are those trails?
Open Street Map ones, right?
Okay. So they're all,
No, it's not.
It's not, is it a different one?
are they all public access
Oh,
trails?
no,
Private.
No.
This is not, because I'm looking at right here, right? And so here's the Hughes Farm. Yeah, that's the
Yep.
Hughes Trail.
Yep.
And this is Dale Danny's property right here, which has a whole bunch of, you go to Open Street map.
Yeah, they have.
There's a whole bunch of trails there. So those are not on this map.
Right.
Unless they chose to do open street, not public trails only, not private trails.
Well, they would have to have gone through. So this may be what Chuck has started working on of trails that are accessible. So let's just go through them kind of quickly and then see what we want. So this one has a lot of the same trails. Take a look at the Danny piece and see whether
Yeah,
that's,
so it's not on there.
it's not on this.
So this looks like it's, I would say,
We're trying to figure out what chapter lands are
That's, yeah, it's gotta be the
in the
chapter.
orange, there's a lot of them.
But
oh, this
Could be
is, this is,
61.
yeah, no, this is the Sportsman's Club.
Yeah, that would be chapter 60, or could be chapter 60.
I don't know what chapter 61 is.
It means it's, they don't have to pay taxes until they go to sell it. And if they want to sell it, if they want to sell it to a private person, they have to pay all the back taxes.
So essentially it's a nonprofit.
the town of the first refusal on.
Correct. That's basically,
So that's that one.
it's not,
And
it can be private. So
what this, the advantage of this one is that it does show areas that are public access.
When you these have roads.
This one does, yeah, they do not have roads. This one has. roads. I think having the roads on them is very valuable. Does this have Danny on it? Can you see? Yes.
Hold on a second. Oh, Hughes. Yes.
get somewhere.
Yes,
Back here.
Yeah.
again.
this is, so the red.
That's down in East. But it doesn't have.
I'm not sure what the
Berry acres. Doesn't have Berry acres for whatever reason.
Well,
Yeah, it's very.
That's Berry acres.
Just the
And
Danny,
what it doesn't show is the park.
because that
Yeah.
looks like the same. Yeah, isn't this what you said Danny is here?
I just said in my new difference.
Because that is also there.
So that's Catherine. So yeah, that has some of the Danny. Yeah. it does.
This is Danny.
And that's
This-
that,
this is too.
yeah.
Oh.
And I bet it's on the other one too. if we
Oh,
don't-
no, it's not. It's not on the other one.
Okay.
So the Danny's on.
Okay.
So if we don't like the first.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Right. Well,
The one
This
without
one
the
doesn't,
Danny.
this one has the link information.
Yeah.
Well, no, Danny, he's a private trail.
Right. So this may be what Chuck was doing. Well, but again, it's, we're trying to get, you know, obviously we need to get Danity off.
Right.
But I think we want roads. And this makes it really busy with all this, but
Yeah, I agree.
I think having some light green shading for public lands might be a good thing, and it would helpful for us in terms of where we need to be putting trails too.
Mhm.
This is all DC highway.
Yeah,
It should be identified
yeah,
because it's open to the public.
Yeah,
right.
that's right. You can hardly help it.
I like that one. Is it?
Yeah.
Well, no, because these trails are all in green and the green is
Vacant.
vacant. I'm not sure.
I don't know what vacant means, but
Yeah.
Doesn't have houses.
It's not developed,
Yeah.
undeveloped land.
Yeah.
They're not vacant, undeveloped. Yeah,
That's not, that green is not helpful,
No, it's
but
confusing.
we should have public accessible.
Right.
Because that actually, those roads do look developed.
And none of them have the legacy trails.
Like this one here, like this one here doesn't have the, the trail from the park headquarters to,
Saddle Hill,
huh?
to Saddle Hill Road.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, this one.
Oh, it is?
Is that one?
Good. Oh, okay, okay, yeah, okay.
It does have that. But
Yeah, it has a couple like private trails as well, one here, like, where was it?
well, this is private.
Right, but, Legacy Farms,
You see south is right.
yeah, there's this little thing, these little really light dotted ones. Those are actually pretty, I was on those a
I
couple
think-
days ago. And that must be on private land.
that's private.
Yeah, but it is shows as dotted, just really faintly.
Because there's some county property in there too.
why?
I'm not sure it shows Legacy Farms North.
It does, it does.
Do the colors mean anything?
Yeah, they do. They're
Different,
very
different trail systems.
difficult. There's too many heads.
I would say like that the systems have different colors, because it's just too hard to see some of them, and I'd rather see the system done a different trail.
You can see all the
Well, this is-
details of.
You know, this is
Maybe-
an area where you get it.
Right.
Of our, what I think of the post.
Yeah, but I think that one and the one before it are good now.
Yeah, there.
Yeah. So this,
Maybe there's
Right.
little differences in color, right?
All right, what is this?
this one's missing,
Like,
Missing
A lot.
amount.
unless you're in Upton State Forest.
So this is just DCR.
maybe.
DCR.
This is,
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
this is a DCR one. yeah.
this is just, this is state trails.
Yeah,
mm,
which is good.
So I think we like different components.
all right, so
Yes.
let's pull this thing, yeah.
So the one.
This one shows roads,
Try
right?
to make notes. We like seeing, I'm gonna make notes, so try to go. So I can capture, so we like seeing roads,
Yes.
Good.
How are you gonna get there? Mhm.
And public open space.
like in that,
Well, that's this one here, right? The
No.
coloration of open versus, public.
Well,
property.
No, but this has, all this green is vacant, land. We don't want vacant on here.
But the fact this is shaded and this is not shaded,
Right.
like the fact that this is shaded to the point where you want to differentiate between public property versus not public property.
Right.
And this one, we can differentiate between state property and town property.
Mhm.
Yeah, so why is this shaded?
That's town forest.
Okay, so only town forest is shaded.
Yeah.
So this map as a base would be good, but then put the public.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to differentiate,
Maybe.
all these trails.
Definitely the yellow.
Yeah. the
I don't
DCR.
like having the trails in different
Yeah,
colors.
it just seems silly.
Right, yeah, I agree. One color.
I would not advocate one color. I would not advocate 30 colors. What I would advocate is trails that are walking trails, multi-use trails.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
bike trails.
Category, you have to identify it.
We would do that with the team.
Yeah, that's-
You could say, listen,
Okay.
this is something that, like when you look at the Hughes Farm Trail, yeah, you won't take a stroll around the loops,
Right.
right? But you would take a stroll around on the gravel or the stone dust.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be a different color. I'm just that's what I'm thinking.
If we can do that, I like that.
Yeah, that should be doable. I mean, they can put 45
I
different
like
trail
the
colors.
categories, the identifying.
Just kind of.
That is helpful.
Well, how would
Just
we
maybe
do
less
that?
colors.
So they say, this DCR, but it's only very, actually selected this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
What's that?
Well, you would look at this and you wouldn't be able to tell that you can drive through there to get to these trail access points.
There's a lot more trails.
And there's a lot more trails internal.
But also driveways.
Really, really
Park
far.
roads.
Yeah, you can't see them.
I don't understand. Can you say it again?
Okay, so what it's got is, it shows very clearly the long trail for some reason.
Right.
And it's got the Aiken Trail is missing. Label, I'm saying.
There's a house down here. This property right along the water here.
Yeah.
That's owned by Fish and Wildlife.
Right.
The house.
But it doesn't have all.
The house was cut out, but
But that
you're saying
trail
it's
is the public trail.
Trail in the State park?
Yeah.
Lots of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of trails.
That's because the state park doesn't have those
Yeah, but it's long trail.
electronically. If you go on OSM, it doesn't even have.
Well, it has them on the state park.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, look at.
In fact, it's even got some.
You can see the difference
Some
Okay,
official.
versus here.
okay.
State park.
Work there.
Yes.
Now, how did, well, because they probably don't have those trails named. These are only the name trails on this map.
Oh, yeah, there's a name in there too.
Right, so this,
These are trails.
what, I'm looking at this map, Ken, and this has names on it.
Those are.
So I'm thinking that the ones with names on this map are printed here,
Maybe.
right? And so that's why that red is only because you look here and like,
I said,
whatever red.
so they ran out of colors and then they didn't play.
No, they just didn't name them.
They just have their name.
Showing
Okay,
on the drawing.
I think those down there are different trail areas,
yeah,
not individual trails.
right. They're trail areas.
Right, and so, and I think Ken's point is that the state park would have more trails, like.
Yeah, definitely.
Wanting to mark them all red.
It shows them in like light dotted.
Yeah.
Here.
I almost wonder if they did it because there were so many in the state parks, they decided to do a separate map for it, but
Tone.
Well, no, I mean, this map here, the bottom is got it on.
that's what I'm saying. That's why they did them all there, because they would have been too busy here.
Oh,
And the scale might even be different. I don't know.
Let's go.
Does it?
What was this all about? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
All right. Well, I asked him to print out the open street map
okay.
trails and then what Chuck Dotchie had started on working with them.
And you think.
And then we got two more in addition. I think Chuck's maybe the first one, which was again, that attempt to
Which is finally.
public land trail.
So what's the purpose of having these maps?
Go to the public at some point.
A combination to show the public, but also for us to,
Can
Like
figure
the
out what we want to
plan.
do.
Yeah.
So they were already useful for that, actually.
yeah. So again, if we put public lanes on here, we can look and see what, like, for example, right now you look at Legacy and say, oh, there's no trails in there. That's land town, and for the benefit of the town, so it should.
No, this one makes it so, like, it's a little hard to see the trails on that map. That's why they need to be a better color. It's like on this one, you can sort of see, oh, look, there's no trails in that area of town, or there's no
This
trails
is a good planning map.
Yeah.
in a way.
And this is where you can see the connectivity. The tough thing, you can't see the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's tough to figure out, like, how do we make these
If
connect?
we could get the color of the trails on there all red like this, maybe, I don't know. I know what you said about surfaces.
You could just make it
But-
thicker. Thicker red.
Well,
Yeah.
what purpose, so Linda?
Yeah.
To see, because I want to see the roads, but I can't see the
Right,
trails.
for planning.
Yeah.
For planning, right? So if you want to see, for usage, for transparency, that would be different.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Like you would need to color differentiate the trails. Multi-use versus not multi-use for planning.
Well, we're not talking a lot of miles of multi-use trails, so I think it's pretty easy to.
Or sidewalks,
Hand it in.
differentiate sidewalks, right? It's implied if you have the roads.
So I think, yeah, we have the road, I think we have the public space.
I bet there's no sidewalks on any of these.
Actually, these things were some sort of designation that. So this is like a parking lot there?
All parking lots, those are designated
So,
parking lots.
so that symbol apparently is, it does a terrible job of it, but it's somehow
Parking area.
telling you what is drivable when the park's fully open, I think.
No, it says those are parking areas.
Maybe so.
Yeah, so those little, the Hopkins
it's a
State
lot
Park's
of
a lot of park spot, yeah.
Park.
I guess it-
What's this thing? The town border?
Yes.
Okay.
Across the
Okay.
street. Yeah.
Think about them over there.
So
Maybe-
how would
Yes,
this
right.
committee use these for planning purposes?
So
For reference, when
Mhm.
we're looking at a certain area, what's already there, what do we need to do?
Mhm.
For purposes of discussing connectivity in a certain area. So these are good overall
Mhm.
planning discussions. I don't think we're ready to post anything yet.
Mhm.
But these, I think, are valuable
Mhm.
when we're talking about a certain area, we can get a broader picture.
Well, I think over time, we go from all the publicly available
Yeah,
on something like that with the roads, with the,
Yeah.
with the publicly available space and removing the private, the land on Dale's property. Those come off,
as being accessible.
right, public, they're not publicly available.
Yeah.
And then it becomes something that we can go out to the public with.
Right.
Would
But there's a
maybe
lot of-
show them as a different, like a lighter shade, like a dotted line maybe, not as a solid line like they are here.
For the public, why would you want to do that though? For our sake, maybe, but not anything we'd show the public, right?
Well, that's that becomes a question because they're available on all trails, that all the online ones have them. So somebody pulls up this and goes, well, how come those aren't on there? So maybe there is a way to use this actually to educate.
Yeah.
You know, the dotted trails are not publicly available, accessible trails. They are gonna show up on your all trails, et cetera. With permission, you know, the base can be used, with permission of the landowner.
DCT. I think.
The Chuck one, so maybe. We think that's the Chuck one. This is cool to see.
I think we ought to have roads.
It's a pretty good size too. We were worried it
Yeah.
to be too big. Was that Ken?
We ought to have roads in it,
Yeah.
so.
More obviously
More
colored.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a challenge when you have such a large area
Yeah.
and then you go trying
I think it's a
Endpoints.
pretty good size though.
roadside,
Yeah.
names and things like that. It's just been through this.
Right.
It's a challenge.
Well,
That's
if
all right.
we wouldn't
It's
use it in a vacuum, we would also have it online. Like,
Yeah.
it's a really good thing to use in a meeting like this, because you can't look at a big
No,
map
No, I
online.
agree. It's,
But you can dig
It's
in online
reference,
for
it's planning.
details.
it's a workable map that we can use at meetings.
I think the
It's like,
size is
it's like
pretty
using
good.
Google Earth, you know,
Yes.
at this scale, roads don't appear, but as you shrink down the roads.
Do we think this is a good size to work?
I think this is a good size to work with. If we need to go back and we're working with a certain area, we can certainly
Yeah.
ask for something to be blown up in an individual area, but this is a good general map, a working map that we could use going forward.
But another thing that distinguishes these is whether or not there are trails shown in adjacent towns. So like this one's got adjacent towns and
Yeah.
many of these other ones don't, which.
Well, they're just really light. They're shown as very light.
Yeah.
Like Ashland State Park and.
Well, they have the
These are-
PCR maps.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I think we're gonna be using all of these four maps for different purposes and combining them as we go along. It's hard to see it tonight because we're just talking in general perspective, but when we get to a certain project, I
Yeah.
think we'll be able to pull this information. I think they did a good job
Yeah,
there.
I think we'll, ideally, we get down to one map that had
Yeah,
roads on it.
Yeah.
Trails on it,
yeah, I think,
open, you know, available public spaces.
I just don't think we're there yet.
No, but
No, but
but
it's notes on
definitely
everything
heading in
you
that
said,
direction.
maybe you can give them that
Yeah.
feedback.
I think that's what he was looking for, is to
Yeah.
say, okay, here's.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess I like David's idea of, you know, these two combined. So we put one different color for trails that are, shared use paths versus pedestrian paths, and then pedestrian paths get subdivided into, you know, solid line for all the publicly usable trails, and then ones that are on private land,
Right.
get a different, get
I think-
a dash line.
The challenge for this committee is going to be identifying those.
And
various
that's our job to go.
Because
through.
they can't do it.
That's,
Right.
yeah, I would think they could do that.
And so that's why these different maps are going to come in handy for us.
Another thing that I would add to this though is parking areas, public parking.
Yes.
areas.
One of them had a
Yeah,
state park.
that one,
This one has the state park ones, but that's a
Yeah.
good point. Because we don't have that many with good parking spots, so.
And they should have that little parking symbol so people can just look at.
Yeah, it's like if I want to go to this area, where can I park?
Right.
And again, we may need to tell them that, they may not know.
And yeah, and that's gonna be an interesting one too. So for example, we're putting the parking spaces in, hopefully, by Ash Street, that'll be 2 spaces. Do we also, I mean, Blueberry is right down from there. Blueberry is a very wide road within, you know, a couple hundred yards of that trail. Do we put that in as accessory parking, something to that effect?
I mean, Peter, should we sit down with the people who made this map and try and refine it?
I would think so. Yeah, well, I think that's what Linda's getting the points, and we'll bring that to Josh and say, hey, here's
Yeah.
our next step is what we do.
It's gonna take a number of iterations.
Yes.
You tell them that.
Absolutely.
yeah, it's easily very work as well.
Huh?
There's some field work as well to see which trails are passable and which ones are overgrown and no longer there.
Right, and Josh was pretty good. He said, yeah, when I'm out using trails, I use all trails. I also like a hard copy map if I, you know, in certain areas. So it's like, okay, he understands sort of the value of both. Speaking of that, all trails, you said you had more.
Yeah, so like many trail apps, the source is OpenStreet, right? For all trails.
Okay.
What we can do with all trails, and it's not an agreement, it's just, they say, all they need is name and email addresses for the people who are going to be governing this. And we would give them the GIS file, the file that supports these maps, and give them a boundary. And say, okay, here's the boundary, whether it's the town or not, some other portion of it. And those users, the people who have names and email addresses, can provide feedback to all trails and say, this is private property, this is a state property, this is town property, these are the trails. And when that happens, or when, then they'll update all trails, not OpenStreetMap, because this is open source or, and that's it. So anybody using all trails will be able to differentiate. And also, all trails will provide information about usage. So these are folks who are using all trails, using the trails in the town. We can get heat maps, figure out where people are going, the frequency, that type of stuff. And we can get that data and understand, all right, for people using all trails, these are the routes they're going, this is the number of trails they're hitting, et cetera, et cetera.
That sounds good. Can I ask a question? So since All Trails is based on OSN, we can also just go to OSN and tell them the trail is private. Would All Trails pick that up then? When they get the latest updates from OSN? Like,
I can't answer that. I don't know. That seems reasonable. I don't know.
because if all of them pick it up from OSN, then it might be smarter for us to update OSN.
Go to the
Who
date.
can update OSN?
Anyone, it's an open source, it's.
Right, so,
Oh,
okay, so you can go in and market private right now.
Right, but I think the private thing is something that they check, or somebody has to be. Like, there's something about the private, you have to do something to be okay to say if something's private or not private. I
With-
attended a webinar and there was,
With OpenStreetMap.
yes.
So if there's a trail on my property that somebody already mapped out,
Mhm.
I need special access or somehow to say,
Something like
hey,
that.
that's on private property.
Yeah, something like that.
That seems weird.
Well, it's worth checking because if that is the base and then all the other apps pick that up, that's probably the way to go versus All Trails and hoping that the others pick up what All Trails has or having to go to each of the individual.
I attended a webinar from OSM people where they talked about that. I can go relook at my notes and I can also contact them because they provided their contact info and find out.
OSM works worldwide too, right? And it also, has the local language only in many countries.
Yeah.
So that's the information that I got from the.
Okay, but no, it's helpful for me to keep being reminded that, yeah, they can do heat maps and stuff like
I
that.
like
'Cause
that,
I
yeah.
really think that's
Well, that would get us
Potentially.
usage data,
which
which is
is
very valuable to us.
And the other one, Trail Forks, is that the one you use for like,
Yeah, I use it.
and you said they have heat maps
Yes.
too. We should just be aware the different, we can get multiple.
Do
Yeah.
both groups have a demographics of their users? I mean, All Trails, I
I
assume
don't
is
think
pretty much,
so.
is pretty general, but Trail Forks may be more bite centric.
Definitely.
It definitely, I mean, it's the one that I think is most useful for mountain biking.
Mhm.
And that's what I use it for.
And what's any idea what the difference is between, why do they have that versus just using All Trails?
I think because they have a lot of bike specific stuff on it.
Yeah, well, you can actually, on Trail Forks, you can actually select an activity that you want to do, and it'll give you trails that are geared toward that activity. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but if I want to go cross-country skiing, I can select cross-country skiing
Okay.
on it, and it won't give me like hiking trails.
It's not gonna give you a rocky going down,
Yeah,
the whites type trail.
So it's just one app versus another.
yeah,
It's really kind of the user preference.
yeah. I mean, I stayed away from all trails initially because I didn't want to pay for it. And a while ago, it was almost useless unless you paid for it. I think that's changed since then. Whereas Trail Forks is actually, I find really useful enough that I do pay for it because it tells you where you are. I mean, it's linked to your GPS. And
Doesn't All Trails tell you where you are?
yeah, it probably does as well. But if you don't pay for it, it doesn't have that feature.
No. No, I was using it for free for a long time. It was a
Okay.
GPS feature. What you have to pay for is downloading the maps.
Okay.
So you need the
So
data.
you can get on your phone and it could be live as you're using it. But if you want to download a map ahead of time and print it like that
Mhm.
person, you'd have to pay for that.
Right. Yeah. No, Trail Forks, I don't think you get the GPS unless you pay for it.
So at user preference, it sounds like.
Yeah, although All Trails, I think is probably, wider distribution.
I wouldn't be able to say one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, there's other apps as well.
Probably, what would be worth doing is taking a few trails and looking at the heat maps of both.
I don't know if we can get the heat map from All Trails without signing on,
Oh, right.
right? And signing
Probably
on,
both. probably
well,
both.
signing on, it's
It's easy, yeah.
yeah, I'll just give them my name and email address and
Don't you have to give them the GIS thing though?
you have to give them a GIS thing. Yeah, that's right. And the other thing too, I had a flag was that, so let's just say half of our group is on this All Trails communicate, right? And so we have to govern ourselves, right? We would have the opportunity to map the trails in All Trails or correct them or make comments on them in All Trails for like the Hopkinton State Park trails, which to me that wouldn't be right, right? There would have to be some coordination with the state park, right? I would imagine. And the same thing if you're at the Audubon Society, right, Waseca, right? And if you're out walking the trails of Waseca, I could go in and tell All Trails, oh, this is a trail I went on. Well, I'm sure that the Audubon Society doesn't want that to happen. And so that was a flag I had. Yeah, no, those are the things I was thinking about. And their recommendation was you just make sure that you guys are coordinating with each other. I was like, all right, that's easier said than done, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, related to this, one of our thoughts was having specialists in different things. Probably somebody being specialist in the mapping apps or few people is a good idea, so we all don't have to
Mm.
learn and manage all of it, at some point, you know, just because we have a lot of things we have to do and
Yeah, and I mean, again, I like the heat map idea, but which one's better or which one? So
Yeah. you
I'd be
pick a
curious if the,
Population, if you use
if
different
the
apps.
two of you can take a look at, say, Lake Whitehall, the trail around Lake Whitehall, and just do a heat map. And if one has 50 users and the other has 3 users, that gives us an indication as to which one ought to be predominant in our thinking and how we move forward with it.
what would that tell them?
Well, it says that most people who are popping on the trails coming from an outside area are going to be getting on the one that has a higher use. You're just,
I see what you're saying.
you don't exclude the other.
On bikes versus.
Yeah, no,
walking.
you don't exclude the other, but you say, okay, when we're, we should be gearing our thinking towards the higher use.
It's a nice
Yeah.
idea to compare what their results look like.
Right, and frankly, I'd just be curious to see, we know, for example, that one gets, look at the number of cars in the parking lot without boats attached to them, and it's getting pretty high use.
Eh,
It'd be curious to see, how many folks are getting there via one of the apps.
I walk on Whitehall at least once a week, if not more, and I almost never see anyone. See people fishing, but almost
Mhm.
nobody walking trails. Weekends more, but
Yeah.
not that much.
Okay.
Center Trail would be a good one. That's,
But at any rate, in order to get the all trails heat map, I would have to give them a GIS
Yeah.
file.
Mm-hmm.
which shows the boundaries. I bet
I
that,
would actually advocate for this one here and say, listen, these are the ones that we know about, our town trails, and the ones that are not on this are private.
Right.
although we're not very sure finished this yet, right?
Well, I would,
Right,
if
but-
I was gonna talk to, I suggest we talk to Chuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Was Chuck Wilson driving?
Working with Yeah, Luke, and then before that with. I might forget. Bottom line, useful stuff. All right, the next topic is
Right.
clarity. And again, what I'm looking for there is just, I started going through what trails are, do I think we need to be working on? And then somebody else raises an issue and says, oh, we need to get money for this activity or this trail. And I mean, we were doing this at Trails Club and there's a bridge that connects the Woodville Rod and Gun Club over to Fruit Street. The bridge itself is in really rough shape and it needs to be redone. There's Woodville advocates for doing that. So, okay, that's a priority for the neighborhood. Is that really a priority for us? We talked then about Berry Acres and the fact that you've got this big apartment complex that, for lack of a couple of bridges in that area, folks can't get from there and do the loop in Berry Acres. And how do we as a group start that, we can't do everything all at once. How do we prioritize what we do work on?
So I just also want to raise, is this just priority for trails or for things that Trails Committee does?
It's for all of our time, yeah.
Okay.
So is it,
One include,
and again, is it more important for us to be working on a physical Berry Acres or on a trail-wide, town-wide master plan for the trails and the web? And we've got to do it all. But doing it all at the same time is impossible. And then you just end up, bouncing, becoming the squirrel looking for nuts. What did you ask me about 5 minutes ago? I'm working on that right now. And, I'm now off over
Yeah,
here.
I'm a big fan of focusing and finishing rather than a lot of multitasking.
So what happened to, remember when we did our big stuff on the board and we broke it down into categories? Did that lead to some priorities and we remember where they are, what they are? Does anybody remember off the top of their head? Because
It did have some of that prioritizing. I mean, I think maps was kind of like
yeah.
job number one, I think, actually.
We can check the.
At that time, I'd thrown up a couple of trails as part of that, and that got bumped down because we had some sort of big picture things, but
I think one of the other priorities we had was the budget, because we have money.
right.
We don't know where it is and we don't have line items. And I don't know where Scott is with that, but I suggest that that would be something, because what are we gonna do?
So we have
to know where our money is.
$60,000 that we have, if we
Well,
want, that we couldn't
Not
spend.
only that, we've got $48,000 attached to CPC funding for just one project.
Right.
I might suggest that we
Right, but I
concentrate
think we're
on
gonna
some
lose
money items.
60,000 if we don't do something
Correct,
about
so I
it.
have some,
That might be.
I
a
have some
priority.
lines about that. And it ties into your priorities, segment one, that would come,
Mhm.
segment one, do we debrief? But just throwing out some general things, was a parking lot that not everybody talks about, or it was there, so they may not know about it. But that's one place where that money could go to. If, for instance, we decided to use that big portion of that, because that's not gonna be cheap. It's a time sensitive issue because we would have to go out and get a quote. If we get a quote and we submit that before June, before the end of June, we can then carry over that money, but we have to have a written quote. So this committee would have to decide if that's a priority, we want to do that. And then I'm sure that you've got vendors that you will have used for
Yeah, we would-
TMC. I mean, we had vendors that we were using, so we'd have to talk about that. So that's why I was suggesting we need more than one meeting. We're gonna have to meet more
Yeah,
often
so-
to discuss some of these things, but I would suggest we think about these money items first.
Right, so so Jane's correct, we have
Two
the
buckets.
48,000 for phase one. And we did the site walk out there, and I thought that was great. We kind of saw where things could go easily. I think the idea of mapping that and getting a contract in place with somebody to do mapping of the trails in that area, I think would be really useful using that money. As a separate from that is the idea that this, by the end of June, we have $60,000 that's potentially available, and we could put a parking lot in for 10 grand. of that.
Cost the 48,000 for the map.
That's
Has
only
to
That
happen
is-
by June, right?
That does not have to happen by.
No.
We need to talk about that immediately.
That's not
Okay.
the immediate concern.
Well, CPC is going to want an answer, or at least a
No, but-
plan. So we need to.
No, but they're fine with, 26 is our deadline on that. 2026.
Okay.
Yeah, we're plenty of time with
I
that.
did-
That's not a fun, yeah.
Right, so that we could put
Up a little bit.
Yeah, the J money is restricted.
Yes. All right, so then we're back to the 60 grand.
Right,
Is that
and
what-
again, we don't want to just spend money willy-nilly, but if we've got something that, like,
Gotta get-
we all agreed on that site walk that a parking lot on East Main Street would be great.
So
I have
why did
reached
you
out
agree?
to 26.2 Foundation. They like the
Can I
idea.
just pause? Not everybody was here.
Yeah, right, so that's why.
Wasn't
I
it
was
that
suggesting we
long?
debrief.
Can you just say what it was?
So,
Yeah, so.
yeah, so the site walk was to walk the area that's being considered for,
segment
consistent
one
with phase one,
The
segment
Upper
one, the Upper Charles Trail.
Into State Park.
Yeah,
It's Main Street.
and looking at that,
Main Street.
there are pieces of that are going to be sort of questionable at this point. Having said that, there's trails there. It would make sense to spend that money, some of that money, to get that area mapped out well.
It'd be good publicity for this committee as well.
Oh,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So are we talking both
No, I think what we're talking right now is,
They're financing area.
yeah,
Only from there to Legacy Farms North.
well, just for the parking lot.
For the parking, Legacy Farms. North
Right,
to the-
and the trail is further conversation because we have until twenty
We have
twenty-six.
plenty of time to talk about that, but to summarize briefly what we did on that site walk
Yeah.
is that we decided that mapping that area, because we went down one way and then out a different way, and there's some trails
We
and
did it in two parts.
yes,
Yeah, so you're talking about what I would call part two. The second walk is the one, right?
right.
Down to East Main Street. Yeah.
Yeah,
But we can map for the stuff that's for the 48,000, we can map all of that Legacy North, which then is valuable to put on a map that then goes down in a parking lot that we all looked at and went, boy, it'd be great to have visibility of a parking lot here.
yeah, I tried parking there, I think last week, right after the heavy rainstorm. I was like, no, I'm not parking here.
No.
It is wet.
Can we get a quote on what would it entail? To go in there and, because I would imagine you'd have to remove some of the topsoil
Yeah. but it can
and
be
pile
done.
it somewhere.
I'm pretty sure it can be done for under $10,000.
Yeah, I would put stuff on top and just leave it
Right.
there is there.
Well,
Like you
that's,
slide some of the loam off.
yeah,
And then
have
you,
to
then you
slide-
bring in
Yeah,
road base. to-
because otherwise.
Right.
But keep in mind,
We would, yes.
I'm afraid of DPW guys trying to axe the whole idea for public safety reasons to going down Main Street or
And
whoever's got authority.
because it's wetlands, we have to discuss it with Conservation Commission.
We would, yeah. But we've done this before for trails and or for parking, small parking areas like that, and it's been simple.
That's,
Yeah,
It's not that.
My concern, I think that parking lot would be great. My concern is in terms of permitting it, accessing it off 135. And I think that's when I saw it, that was what I was thinking was gonna be problematic. Whether they're gonna let you get in there from that road.
I have to ask, why are you allowed to get into Legacy Farms itself? Why are you allowed to get in the West?
They've got plenty of sites.
Well, because they're curb cuts and
there's a curb cut in the sidewalk.
that's a state road, correct?
No,
No?
the town takes care of it.
Okay, then, I mean, I'm just saying, that's my only concern. And
It's allowable. There's a curb cut there.
you're gonna have, you're gonna have traffic heading there. People are gonna be turning into it. I would think someone has to. weigh in on that.
Well, see, it's safety.
So I mean, I think if we could get past that problem, I think to put it in there would be, it'd be a great place to have them.
Yeah.
It has high visibility, it accesses a whole bunch of really nice trails.
So when we put the one in off of Pond Street, which is brand new and really analogous to this,
Except less traffic, yeah.
a much less traffic road. So we would want to have the safety folks more involved. But again, it was a pretty simple,
How big a parking lot, may I ask? How many?
4 cars.
Oh,
Just-
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought we were talking.
I think-
more.
I had two for some reason in my head.
No, it's 4 cars like there are at Hughes.
That's what you're talking about. That's what Pond Street is.
That changes, that changes the dynamic, doesn't
No,
it?
no, but we're talking about more maybe off of.
Well, something Hughes size. Hughes was about,
Well, that's a lot more than 4.
Yeah,
it depends on,
that's what we're thinking.
if you go to 5, then you gotta get
Gives me some
Yeah.
planning board
Before
involved.
planning board.
Okay.
So are you suggesting we start off with 4?
No, I think we should start off at 10.
Well, then that's okay. We,
But
it,
That's
it,
that's a bigger permitting
changes the-
process.
Oh, is it?
What,
yeah, you have to go before planning board.
to have in
I
place by the end of June to do this, would we?
Well,
planning board?
no, to save the money, we need a quote for potential construction.
Yeah,
But
so
we don't need
I can talk to the planning director. And he's been really good on, if you look at Pond Street, College Rock, and Hughes, the 3 that we've put in. On most days, there's the potential for more than 4 cars. I have called them all 4 cars spaces.
Yeah.
He's been fine with it.
Ah,
He knows that, they're 4 semis.
4 really big cars.
4 semis. And these are not spaces that are going in the downtown area. Now, having said that, I will talk to him about it because to your point, this is higher visibility than Pond Street, College Rock, or even Hughes. But he's very aware that we're playing a little bit of a game to avoid, and there are no special.
I don't know, I'm missing something here. If you have a car coming from Western Nurse Street in that direction, coming down that hill, it seems to me if you're gonna need some sort of significant turn in there to get people off 135 safely, or someone's gonna bother over it. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. It just seems to me that
The access road is already there, the cuts are already there.
Right.
Um,
It's the same thing happens with a neighbor right there.
Right,
Somebody turning into their neighborhood parking lot. If they have a party, they're getting a whole bunch of people turning in.
that
So
it's already.
is what
it's
it
already
is.
going on. That's already belonged to 26.2 people are going in and out of there.
okay,
All the
so
time.
that's fine.
I have a question though.
Yeah, that one was a barn.
Yes,
I have a
Yes.
question. If we said we wanted to do 10 parking spots and know we need to go to planning board for that approval, does that have to be done by the end of June?
No.
no,
No, so
No,
we
we
don't
need
have
it
to limit
full.
it to 5 if we don't want to.
we want to preserve the money, so that means getting a legitimate quote from somebody to say, okay, we want to do a 40-foot by 60-foot slash of land. We need to go in there and scrape off 6 inches or more of topsoil.
Loam and
And yeah, the loam and pile it somewhere and bring in gravel. So that people don't get stuck. Then we can do, as long as we preserve the money, then we can go to Concom, then we can go to planning board, then we can do the other things. That's for later. What's important is
getting a contract.
getting the contractor in place.
Right.
Because if it falls through, we don't get the permission, that money goes back to the town.
Right.
Well, I
Jack?
have a question.
Hold on a second, Jack.
No, well, I think after that walk and where that is, the visibility of it, so many people will see that the Trails Committee is doing something.
Yeah.
I think we should
Mhm.
stop
Pursue it.
talking about it and just proceed and get a bid on it.
So
That's what
we can put the contract in place pretty quickly. With regard to 26.2 and approval, they're aware that we have this time crunch. So they want to meet with their board and talk about it, but they definitely were.
Whose
Positively.
land is it?
Hmm?
Do they get to say no?
It's actually
Yeah.
town land, but they have a 99-year
lease.
lease on it.
Even on that part?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does the lease cover all those trails too?
The ones on the lower, most of the ones in the lower area.
But
Not
we've
any
been
long
talking
time.
with them for years and years and years. They're very.
I think we should just go ahead and do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say we go ahead.
So
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have a contract?
Huh?
Yeah, I use Scott Kern for all the other stuff. He's very good. He's local, cheap. And his equipment's, 300 yards up the road right now,
That's a
because he's doing Danny's.
Okay.
It's a question for you. I think you already know the answer, but the rest of us need to hear it. To get this quote, we're going to have to assume what the requirements might be from Concom. Do you have a fair advice, in the parks, intelligent advice you can give them knowing Concom, because we're still gonna have to go to Concom.
Right.
So we want to make sure we have enough money
yeah,
we could say, we could take a motion to spend up to, I don't know, I'm just gonna throw this out there, $35,000. We don't know. We might be able to get it for 10, but I'd rather, because we've got the 60,
Mhm.
play it safe, because we don't know what Concom is going to actually.
What are the wetlands there that we're talking about?
There's that stream.
It's the stream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's also just marshy there, generally.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wet.
So is it?
Literally
Well,
wetland.
Well, that piece is actually, it's up.
That's what I was wondering. What is wetland jurisdictional?
Yeah.
Do we know? I think that would be really worthwhile.
Well, it's certainly within 100 feet of that creek. So that would be wetlands, but I suspect it's a request for determination of applicability, looking for a negative determination.
Okay, okay.
It's not an NOI, I don't think. And again, the way typically we've done that is to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we think. I mean, again, Chuck Dotchie, who is a wetland scientist, would do that.
But
For
there's
us.
also the consideration that
Can I ask a question on that? Is Chuck weighed in on this, site? And its practicality?
No.
Might be worthwhile asking.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
either. Before we sign a contract or get a contract going, I would do that.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion that we spend up to $35,000.
So and if something before we do that,
my question had to do with whether there's a grandfather aspect of it, given that there's old nursery road usage of that property.
It's probably it would be an ag exemption, which wouldn't exist for us.
Right.
It would not, that's the way that works legally.
So yeah, it's not agricultural use, right?
Because it's not an existing.
need
it had
an
been-
exemption for Concom.
Yeah.
You take an ag road and then put houses in and go looking for an exemption from, if it's in ag use, it's in ag use, but otherwise you can't.
But historically, it had been used as a nursery road, so whatever it's not exactly pristine.
But we're
order,
talking
that's what I'm
about
saying.
which is different.
But then it's-
I would revise the number downward a little bit. I think one is, I mean, so
I didn't
based on,
I didn't even get to say the number.
he started to,
Huh?
he started
He
to.
said up to.
Oh, I said-
I would say 25 is the max.
I don't see it makes
I
no
think-
difference.
I don't see what the big deal is.
Well, because-
Unless you have something to spend the other the money.
Yeah, I know.
So are there other things we might want to do with the
Okay.
rest of the 60?
I don't know, but you got like
Maybe
3
we
weeks.
have another
I
meeting
know. And
to go through this
Then-
because it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion. We spend up to $25,000 to develop this parking lot.
Second,
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous and carries.
And can I just say, is it going to be, is it in the parking lot? Would it also be like the trail signs and all that too, or?
Well, that's a good point. Maybe you spend that additional money on that.
well, to develop the parking lot. So if signage comes under that, whatever the enhancement
Again,
is.
I think for this purpose of this, we focus, this is, in some ways, it's found money, so we focus it on the big picture, and then we want to put a sign up that's another $500. We have a $25,000
Why
budget
need trail
ourselves.
signs in there, because none of those trails are labeled at all.
Right, but I mean, we've got our own money.
Okay, so you don't
that-
include it in this?
No, I do, I think
Also,
we can start diverting things.
So then we need to-
Who seconded it, Jack?
I did.
James,
Jane.
did we vote?
Yeah, unanimous.
so what do we spend the rest of the money on?
One comment is, I think Berry Acres, I think to one of your points, we want to be looking close to the downtown or where people are located. So Berry Acres, to me, the fact that you can't get from Hayden or from West Main Street easily into the trails on one of the main trails there because it's flooded, it needs more.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion for up to $5,000 for lumber focused on work in Berry Acres.
Second, and although I don't know.
I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
So this is where a budget would have really come in handy, because what else, to Linda's point, do we have that we might want to do besides boardwalks? Because I would throw a lot more money into boardwalks.
I would too. That's that's
Because
the reason I
that-
stopped.
Yeah. But Peter or somebody else on the committee, what else do we have out there that could use some immediate attention?
There are many places in Berry Acres where one could build.
I
bridges.
know, not just
Right.
one.
Well, I'm thinking of two,
So wet.
of two main areas, and I'm thinking $5,000 would be sufficient to cover the costs for materials for those two.
For those two? Okay, and then we just rely on volunteers to do it.
Yes.
Well, we can do that, that's for sure.
And there's only 2 areas.
And then, then it becomes a priority. This moves up the priority list because we have the money
Right.
for it. And I think for other reasons too, and that's where I think we do need to have sort of a priority,
So here's a question.
this
for you.
versus
Um,
street.
do we have to get an invoice from, say, just throwing this out there, lumber? to show for the purposes of carrying over the money for the town meeting. I think we have to submit some sort of invoice. Yeah, we do. I've been there, done that. Even if it's just something
I mean,
handwritten, an estimate, you need something in
Right.
writing.
You have to submit something.
Yeah.
right. I mean, we've purchased a fair bit of lumber that's still sitting over at, Hughes. You know, with
In the shed.
using a, some, yeah, there's some in the shed, there's some in another area there, that was purchased with money to avoid having it go away, so.
It's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Jane made a comment, we should meet more
I think-
frequently. I recommend we meet in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
2 weeks from tonight,
Okay, which
and
is,
continue this particular topic.
Yeah.
Prioritization.
right, so a working group focused on prioritization.
Yeah.
Starting
Some
with-
other thoughts.
Starting with
For that
the
60,000.
highest priority being the
So far,
budget.
we're at the
So what's the date for 2 weeks from now?
We voted on it.
June 4th.
Board.
So I think we have to, did somebody make a motion for the $5,000?
No.
No, why don't we take that up
Yeah.
next one?
Okay, you want
agree.
to get that out of the way? Okay, you want to think of
It's
this?
9 o'clock, I think,
Okay,
and then, so 2 weeks, I can actually get a
Yeah,
solid
okay.
estimate of
sounds fair enough.
distances
I'm
and
happy to help out too.
So
Put me in the right direction.
Same tonight.
oh, Scott.
if we've really got extra money, why would we get more money,
More lumber.
more lumber for even more bridges?
Well,
Because
because-
there's at least 3 other places I think that we could find. where we-
I think.
Talk about it next meeting.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And it's
And we don't think about the priorities.
So,
do some of that.
It is.
Fourth, you said, is everybody good with that?
And it might not be that we,
Yeah, when,
we don't want to do it.
7 o'clock.
Is June
Yes.
fourth good with everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adjourn, motion to adjourn, second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Did we vote for the money for the?
No, we didn't. No,
No.
we're gonna do that.
25
Just that we put it on
Priority for the next meeting,
June 4th.
Make that agenda item number one.
Don't miss
Right.
anything.
Right. And the other thing is we should be able to get, Chuck and John out there to measure and
Yeah,
get some solid.
yeah,
Okay.
that would be great.
And this money on state property.
Well, the state's okay with that, I can't see why not.
Well, yeah, you have to get permission.
talking to the Phil.
You can, but you have to get permission.
Oh, no, but
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, it's popped into my head that I was this, but, there's real big by my house that goes all the way up. There are 2 small crossings there. Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good night.
Impassable.
You're talking one day.
Those are bigger bridges.
Yeah,
If you go.
we're in a roll.
Yeah.
Takes a long, you go down, you follow that